He returned with Mistress. Discovers ex-wife returned with their triplets. The clouds above the countryside were thick and brooding, matching the weight in Leonardo Kim's chest as his car glided through the winding gravel road. Tall iron gates opened slowly before him, revealing the grand estate that once echoed with laughter, paintings, and love. All of it now replaced by silence and time. In the passenger seat, Sophie adjusted her sunglasses, sighing with impatience. "Is this it?" she asked, her voice light but laced with mild disappointment. "It's rustic." Leonardo didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the mansion ahead, once his sanctuary, now a memory half-forgotten. The elegant stone facade stood tall against the gray sky, surrounded by lush fields that had grown wilder in his absence. He hadn't stepped foot here in 3 years. Not since Clara. Not since the day everything changed. "Yes," he finally said, voice low and unreadable. "This is it." Sophie smiled and leaned toward him, her manicured fingers brushing against his arm. "I still can't believe you brought me here," she whispered sweetly. "Your private estate. All for us?" Leonardo offered a faint smile, but it never reached his eyes. He had met Sophie a year ago, in one of those rooftop galas where champagne flowed and secrets lingered behind every flirtatious glance. She was vibrant, ambitious, and beautiful, a whirlwind that distracted him from everything he didn't want to remember. She made him feel desired again, important, alive. And yet, as he stepped out of the car, breathing in the cold, familiar air of the estate, the illusion began to crack. The gravel crunched under his shoes as he walked toward the front steps. Memories rushed in with every step, the sound of Clara's laughter echoing through the halls, the way she used to paint barefoot on the porch, her hair tied loosely, her face glowing with sunlight and joy. He swallowed hard. Sophie twirled beside him, taking pictures of the landscape on her phone. "You didn't tell me it was so cinematic. This could be a perfect spot for our announcement video." Leonardo gave a short nod, distracted. He didn't bring her here for videos. He brought her here to escape. From the city, from the noise, from the restlessness in his heart that no business deal could soothe. But standing here now, he wasn't sure if he had made a mistake. As they entered the house, Leonardo paused just inside the doorway. The scent was faint but familiar, a mixture of lavender and oil paint. His eyes scanned the foyer, the wooden banister he once repaired with his own hands, the antique mirror Clara insisted on keeping despite the crack in the corner. Nothing had changed, but everything had. Sophie wandered off, exploring the main hall. "This place could use some remodeling," she called out playfully. "Or maybe just a woman's touch." "Don't worry, babe. I've got ideas." He didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the staircase, then to the hallway leading to the back garden. Something pulled him there, an invisible thread wrapped around his ribs, drawing tighter with every step. As he reached the threshold of the garden doors, he stopped cold. Through the glass, he saw a woman kneeling beside a flower bed. Her figure was unmistakable, slim, graceful, her long brown hair tied in a loose braid down her back. She was wearing a simple blouse, slightly stained with soil, her hands moving gently through the leaves. And then, 3 small boys ran past her, laughing loudly. Triplets. Leonardo's breath caught in his throat. He gripped the doorframe as his world tilted. "No," he whispered. One of the boys turned. His face lit up with joy as he tackled his brother. But Leonardo saw it. The shape of his nose, the eyes, the jawline. It was like staring into a mirror from another lifetime. "Leonardo," Sophie's voice echoed behind him. "Come see this bathtub, it's huge." But he didn't hear her. Not really, because Clara turned. She looked straight at him through the glass. Her eyes widened, but her expression didn't break. No gasp, no trembling lip. Just silence. Cold, heavy silence that screamed louder than words ever could. Leonardo took a step back, heart hammering. It was her. The woman he left without a word. The woman he convinced himself he didn't love. The woman who now stood before him, with 3 sons he never knew existed. His knees nearly buckled. He opened the door slowly. The creak of the hinges broke the air like thunder. Clara stood tall, wiping her hands on her apron as the boys clung to her, unaware of the storm brewing. She said nothing. Neither did he. For a long moment they simply stared. Years of pain, betrayal, and unanswered questions flickered in the space between them. One of the boys tugged on Clara's hand. "Mommy, who is that man?" Leonardo's throat tightened. "Mommy, sons, triplets." His mind spiraled as Sophie's footsteps echoed closer. She stepped out behind him, draping her arm over his shoulder. "What's going on out here?" she asked, smiling, until her eyes landed on Clara. "Oh, is this the housekeeper?" Clara didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, proud. She looked at Leonardo as if he were nothing more than a stranger trespassing on a memory. "I'm not the housekeeper," she said, her voice calm but cutting. "I live here." Leonardo finally spoke, his voice hoarse. "Clara?" But she turned her back to him, calling the boys inside. "Come on, boys. It's getting chilly." The door closed behind her with a finality that felt like a slap. Sophie tilted her head. "Okay, what was that?" But Leonardo didn't answer. He was still staring at the closed door, at the ghost of the life he had abandoned, and the realization settled in his chest like lead. He hadn't just lost a wife. Sophie's voice finally broke through his silence. "Leo, seriously, what was that? Who was she?" He didn't respond. She scoffed, stepping in front of him, waving her hand as if to snap him out of a trance. "Hello? Earth to Tycoon. I ask again, who was that woman?" Leonardo's eyes didn't meet hers. His voice was flat. "My wife." Sophie blinked. "What? Ex-wife?" he corrected, more to himself than to her. "Clara." Sophie's lips parted, trying to piece it together. The one you told me was out of the picture? You said she left you." "No," he said, still staring at the window. A shadow moved behind the curtain, one of the boys. "I left her." Sophie folded her arms. "Right? So she stayed here squatting with kids that, they're mine." It was barely a whisper, but it hit like a bullet. Sophie froze. "What?" Leonardo finally turned his head. His face looked carved in stone, but there was something trembling just beneath the surface. Regret, horror, memory. "They're my sons." He walked past her without another word, stepping back into the house, the walls suddenly foreign despite their familiarity. Every corner, every piece of furniture felt like it belonged to someone else now. Someone who had lived here through storms and silence while he vanished into his empire. Upstairs, he entered the master bedroom, his and Clara's. It was no longer untouched like he expected. The bed was different. The curtains, her style. There were children's toys tucked in the corners. Crayons, books, life. His hand hovered over a framed painting by the vanity. A soft watercolor piece. Sunflowers against a soft blue sky. Her signature was in the corner. "Clara," he murmured like a prayer. Or a wound. 3 years ago, he had stood in this very room, with his mother's voice in one ear and his assistant's lies in the other. The scandal they warned him about. The rumors of infidelity. The whispers that Clara had only married him for money. They told him she never truly loved him. That the child she carried might not be his. And like a coward, he believed them. The truth was, he had been terrified. Of fatherhood. Of vulnerability. Of giving someone the power to destroy him. He had signed the divorce papers without confronting her. Had told her coldly that he didn't want to be part of a lie. That she was on her own now. That day still haunted his dreams. Now the consequences stood downstairs with her eyes. His sons. He sat heavily on the bed, burying his face in his hands. The ache in his chest grew louder, more unbearable with each breath. A soft knock at the door jolted him. He looked up. It wasn't Sophie. It was Clara. She stood in the doorway, composed, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the distance in her eyes, the steel that had grown around her heart. "I thought I told you to leave," she said simply. He rose cautiously, like a man afraid to break glass with every word. "I had no idea you were still here." I didn't know about the boys. Clara, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. Her voice cut clean and sharp. You never called. You never checked. You walked away and let me fall apart. Leonardo tried to reach her, his voice cracking. I was told things. My mother, my assistant, they lied? She snapped. And you believed them. She stepped into the room now, no longer afraid. Her strength was quiet but solid. I begged you to talk to me. I wrote letters. I sent emails. You blocked me from your life like I was nothing. And when I needed you the most, when I found out I was pregnant with 3 children, when I was terrified, alone, you vanished. He flinched. I was scared too, he confessed. I didn't know how to handle it. I thought if I walked away. You did walk away, she interrupted, her voice trembling now. And I had to give birth alone. I held all 3 of them in my arms and promised they would never feel abandoned, even if I had to bleed every day to make it true. Leonardo's throat tightened. I'm so sorry, Clara. Sorry? She laughed bitterly. Do you think sorry fills the nights I held them while they cried for a father they never met? Do you know what it's like to see your child look up and ask, why don't I have a dad like the other kids? She wiped a tear from her cheek, then straightened. You don't get to just show up with your perfect little girlfriend and play the victim. Leonardo's jaw clenched. She's not. She doesn't know what this place means. I didn't bring her here to hurt you. But you did, Clara said, turning to leave. Whether you meant to or not. You hurt us. All of us. She paused at the door. You'll be gone by morning. And then she was gone. Leonardo stood alone, drowning in the silence that had once comforted him. He had built skyscrapers, toppled empires, owned cities. But now none of it mattered. He had become a ghost in his own story, a stranger to his own children. And in that moment, he understood the weight of every choice he had ever made. His thoughts spun like a storm. Every word Clara had spoken echoed with a weight he wasn't prepared to carry. He had left her. He had abandoned 3 lives that never asked to come into the world. 3 sons who didn't even know his name. The door creaked softly behind him, but it wasn't Clara. It was one of the boys. Leonardo turned slowly and found a child standing barefoot, clutching a worn blanket, hair tousled from sleep. The boy's eyes, so much like his, blinked up at him in quiet curiosity. You're the man from earlier, the boy said softly. Leonardo swallowed hard, nodding. Yes, I am. The boy stepped closer, hesitant but not afraid. My name's Luca, he offered. What's yours? Leonardo, he whispered, his voice tight. My name is Leonardo. Luca studied him, then looked around the dim room. Are you a guest here? The words stung. Before he could respond, another voice piped up behind Luca. Mama says not to talk to strangers. 2 more boys appeared at the doorway, identical in features but each with their own slight distinction. One rubbed his eyes sleepily, the other held a stuffed lion. Leonardo felt like the earth had shifted beneath him. 3. They were all here, living, breathing, and he had missed it all. I'm not, he started, his voice trembling. I'm not a stranger. I shouldn't be. Luca tilted his head. Are you Mama's friend? Leonardo's eyes burned. He nodded slowly. I used to be. A long time ago. The second boy, Elias, stepped forward, his brow furrowed. Then why did you make her cry? The question sliced through him. Leonardo couldn't answer. His throat closed, his chest tightened. He dropped to a crouch, leveling himself with their height, eye to eye. I made a mistake, he said, barely above a whisper. A very big one. One that hurt her. And hurt all of you. Ian, the quietest of the 3, looked at him with wary curiosity. Are you going to hurt her again? Leonardo shook his head fiercely. Never, I swear. I would never. His voice cracked, and he looked away, ashamed of the tears welling up. He had stood in boardrooms, faced ruthless investors, hostile takeovers, international scandals, and never once had he felt this exposed, this powerless. The weight of fatherhood pressed down on him, foreign and sacred. He didn't know how to carry it. He didn't even know if he deserved to. Luca sat down on the rug in front of him. Mama says people can change. She says love isn't about never messing up, Elias added, sitting beside his brother, but about choosing to stay. Ian stood back, holding the lion tight. But you didn't stay. Leonardo nodded slowly, the shame swallowing his pride. I know, and I can't undo what I did. But if you let me, I want to try. I want to know you. I want to be here. Silence followed. A long, heavy silence. The kind that only children can fill with the purity of their truth. Then Luca reached out and placed a small hand on Leonardo's knee. Do you like dinosaurs? Leonardo blinked, confused. Yeah, I guess I do. Elias grinned. We have a huge collection. Ian's voice came, soft as a breath. I have one with 3 heads. Wanna see it? A laugh escaped Leonardo, fragile and stunned. As tears slid down his cheeks, he nodded, unable to speak. His heart, which had been frozen for so long, cracked open as 3 tiny hands pulled at his, guiding him into their world. They didn't need grand speeches. They didn't care about corporate empires or Forbes lists. They just wanted to be seen, to be known, to be loved. They brought him to their playroom, once a sunroom filled with Clara's art, now transformed into a land of imagination. Toys scattered everywhere, drawings taped on the walls, a tent made from blankets in the corner. The pure chaos of childhood, untouched by judgment. Leonardo sat on the floor as they showed him their treasures. The dinosaur with 3 heads, the cardboard castle they had built, a half-painted model of the moon, and for a fleeting moment he forgot who he had been. He was just a man, with 3 sons, trying to understand how to be a father. Time passed without him noticing. The boys began to yawn one by one, their energy fading. Will you be here tomorrow? Luca asked, curling up in a beanbag chair. Leonardo hesitated, unsure how to answer. He didn't know if Clara would allow it. He didn't know if he even had the right. I hope so, he said honestly. I really hope so. The 3 of them dozed off slowly, leaning on one another, and he watched them in silence, overwhelmed by the cruel beauty of the moment. He had been there the night they were born, but only in name. Tonight, for the first time, he had met them, touched them, heard them laugh, and something shifted inside him that would never return to the way it was. Footsteps behind him made him turn. Clara stood at the door, her expression unreadable, her arms folded loosely, but her eyes, God, those eyes saw everything. She didn't speak. Neither did he. Not right away. Then softly, almost afraid to break the spell of the night, he asked, Why didn't you tell them about me? Clara stepped closer, her voice low and heavy with history. Because I didn't want them to grow up hating you. He looked back at the sleeping boys. They don't. Not yet. Clara swallowed hard. That's what scares me the most. Their eyes met, and for the first time in years, something passed between them that wasn't anger or pain, but fragile, aching truth. She looked down. You should sleep. You'll be gone by morning. He stood slowly. Do I have to be? Clara didn't answer. She simply walked away. Leonardo stepped out into the quiet, needing the air, needing space. He hadn't slept. Instead, he'd watched his sons sleep until the first rays of dawn began to warm the sky. Now, he stood in the garden where Clara had been yesterday, the same place where everything inside him had shattered. The scent of lavender still lingered, mixed with earth and wildflowers. He crouched beside the flower bed, his fingers brushing the soil she'd touched. He wondered how many mornings she had stood here alone, pregnant, forgotten. He tried to imagine her body swollen with life, her hands trembling as she prepared for a future that no longer included him. And he hated himself. Behind him, the door creaked open. He turned quickly, heart lurching. Clara. She stepped onto the porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself, wearing a cardigan too thin for the chill. Her eyes were puffy from sleep or tears. He couldn't tell. Her braid was messy, strands falling around her face, but she was beautiful, fiercely so. Not in the way he remembered from years ago. No, this was something deeper. Something earned through pain. She didn't say anything. He stood, brushing his hands on his pants, unsure if he should speak. Clara's gaze wandered to the flower bed. You always hated getting your hands dirty. Leonardo allowed a small breath of a laugh. That was before I knew what dirt really meant. A beat passed between them. She walked down the steps slowly, standing a few feet away, just close enough that he could smell the faint scent of her skin, like paint, coffee, and lavender. I didn't sleep, he said softly. She nodded, eyes still on the flowers. Neither did I. Did you know I was coming here? No, she replied. The estate was mine after your father passed. He left it to me in his will. Said I was the only one who ever brought life into it. Leonardo blinked. He gave it to you? She nodded. He knew you wouldn't come back. He didn't know what to say. Guilt swelled again, heavy and clawing. I brought her here, he said after a long silence. Sophie. I figured that out, she answered, voice calm but sharp. She called me the maid. Leonardo looked away, ashamed. I should have stopped her. I didn't realize. Clara's tone turned colder. You didn't realize a lot of things. He stepped toward her instinctively. Clara, last night, the boys, they're not props in your redemption arc, Leo, she cut in. They're not some sudden path to your guilt being erased. I know that, he said quickly. I swear I do. When I saw them, God, I don't even know how to explain what it felt like. I've missed so much, too much, and I don't deserve to ask for anything. But I need. What do you need? She asked, folding her arms. My forgiveness? A second chance. He hesitated. Clara's voice cracked now. Because I'm not the same woman you left. I'm not soft like I was. I can't let you come and rewrite everything just because now you feel something. I don't want to rewrite anything, he said gently. I just want to be here, to start where we are. Even if that means only being around, in the background. She looked at him for a long time. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes flickered with emotion. Anger, grief, and something more dangerous. Hope. You were cruel to me, she whispered. The day you left, you didn't ask. You accused. You said I was using you. You said the baby wasn't yours. Leonardo's face twisted in pain. I know. I was scared. And I believed lies I should have questioned. You called me a liar, she said, tears filling her eyes now. You told me to disappear, and I did. And every single day since, I wondered what I did to deserve that kind of hatred. He stepped closer, only a breath away now. You did nothing. Nothing, Clara. I was the one who was broken. I thought walking away would protect me from being destroyed. You destroyed me instead. Her voice broke, and so did he. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice raw. I'll say it every day for the rest of my life if I have to. But more than that, I'll prove it. Not to win you back, not to fix what can't be fixed. But because those boys deserve to know their father. And because you deserved a man who never left. Clara blinked quickly, wiping at her eyes, then shook her head. You don't get to play father now, Leo. They don't know you. You're a stranger to them. I want to change that, he said. Whatever you'll allow. I'll go slow. I won't push. Just don't shut me out completely. She closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them with a sigh. They like you, for now, because kids love attention. But they'll ask questions. Hard ones. Are you ready for that? He nodded. I have nothing left to hide. And what about her? She asked. The woman you brought here to play house? Leonardo looked away. That was never love. It was distraction. And I know how that sounds. But Clara, the only time I felt alive was with you. And I buried that under everything I was afraid of. The garden was quiet again. Then Clara looked at him with eyes full of things unspoken. We'll see, she said quietly. You can stay, for now, in the guest house. Relief broke through his chest like sunlight. He nodded quickly. Thank you. I won't let you down again. She turned to go, but paused at the steps. "They wake up at 7, she said. "Don't be late for breakfast." And just like that, she was gone. But this time, she hadn't walked away to shut the door. The boys were already seated, Luca, Elias, and Ian, talking over each other about dinosaurs, rockets, and the pancakes they hoped would appear. It was a typical morning, one Clara had repeated for years alone. And yet, today was different, because today he was there. Leonardo stood awkwardly at the threshold of the kitchen, dressed in casual clothes he hadn't worn in years. No tailored suit, no polished leather shoes, just jeans, a plain shirt, and a man unsure if he belonged. His presence shifted the room. The boys noticed first. Luca waved at him cheerfully, Elias gave a small grin, and Ian simply stared, as if still deciding whether or not he liked the stranger with his eyes. Clara didn't look at him. She kept cooking. He stepped in quietly. "Morning." Her shoulders tensed slightly, but her tone was neutral. "Morning. Smells amazing," he added. "Don't flatter me. I've been making the same thing for 4 years," she said, turning over the eggs with practiced ease. "The kids don't complain, but I wouldn't call it gourmet." He smiled despite the cold edge in her voice. He was beginning to understand. Every word she spoke was guarded, a fortress protecting the wounds beneath. Luca pointed to the empty chair beside him. "You can sit here, but don't steal my toast." Leonardo chuckled and sat, grateful for the invitation. "Deal." Elias leaned over, whispering loudly to his brother. "He looks like us." Ian frowned, still watching him. "Maybe he's a robot clone." "I'm not a clone," Leonardo said, playing along. "But I am good at building things." "Can you build a rocket ship?" Ian asked. Leonardo nodded. "Maybe not a real one yet, but a cardboard one, with moving doors and painted flames." The boys erupted in excitement. Clara placed a plate of eggs in front of each of them, then finally one in front of Leonardo. Her fingers brushed the table near his hand, only for a second, but it was enough to make him freeze. She didn't look at him. She didn't have to. She was remembering, too. "How did they sleep?" he asked gently. Clara finally met his eyes. "They don't usually fall asleep around strangers." "I'm not a stranger anymore," he said softly. She didn't respond, but her silence didn't feel as cold as before, just cautious. The boys ate quickly, chattering about the day ahead. After breakfast, they begged Clara to let them go play outside. She nodded, warning them to stay where she could see them, and in a blur of sneakers and giggles, they were gone. The moment the door clicked shut, silence bloomed. Leonardo stood, collecting the empty plates without asking. Clara looked at him, surprised. "You never did dishes before," she said. "I didn't know what I was missing," he replied. She watched him, leaning against the counter. "So what now? You plan to win their hearts with cardboard rockets and dish soap?" He turned to face her, drying his hands. "No, I just want to be here, however you'll let me." Clara sighed, folding her arms. "It's not just about them, Leo. It's about me too. I'm not going to let you waltz back in and pretend this is a fairy tale. We don't get those." "I don't want a fairy tale," he said, voice low. "I want reality, even if it hurts." She studied him for a long moment. "Then let me ask you something real." He nodded. "Anything." She stepped closer. "When you left, and I sent those messages, those desperate, broken messages, did you read any of them?" He froze. "No," he admitted. "I didn't. I blocked you. I couldn't face it. I thought it would be easier." Clara's face crumpled for a second, just long enough for him to see the depth of what she'd carried. "And yet," she whispered, "you're here now." He reached for her hand, slow, unsure. "I am, and I'm not leaving again." But she pulled her hand back, not angrily, just carefully. "Words are easy," she said. "You always had the right ones." "I know," he said, voice breaking. "So let me show you, Clara. Let me try." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she picked up the dish towel and wiped the counter slowly. After a long silence, she finally murmured, "They've never had a birthday party." Never had anyone sing to them but me. Never had a father teach them how to ride a bike. Leonardo swallowed hard. I want to be that father, he said. She looked at him, her voice trembling. Then you'd better start by proving you're not going to disappear again. They've survived without you. They'll survive again if you break them. He nodded slowly. I won't. I swear. Outside, the boys shouted in delight as a butterfly landed on the porch railing. Clara turned toward the window, watching them, arms folded across her chest. He has your smile, she said quietly. Elias, when he's not frowning, Leonardo looked out too, watching his sons play. I want to know everything about them. She nodded. Then start listening. They'll tell you who they are, if you pay attention. He glanced back at her. And what about you? Will you tell me who you are now? Clara's expression softened, just for a second. That depends on whether you're really listening. And with that, she walked past him, her fingers brushing lightly against his again. Not by accident this time, just enough to say, I'm still here, but I don't trust you yet. Leonardo stood at a distance, hammer in hand, putting the finishing nails into a wooden contraption he'd built from scrap lumber behind the tool shed. It was crude, uneven but strong. A ramp for toy cars, a platform for rockets, maybe even the base of a new treehouse. He wasn't sure what it would become yet. He just knew he wanted to build something, anything, that they could remember him by. Whoa! Luca shouted from the yard. Is that for us? Leonardo looked up and smiled. Depends. You think you can help me paint it? Elias ran over, eyes wide. You built that yourself? I had some help, Leonardo lied, pointing to a nearby toolbox. But I'd say I did about 70%. Ian inspected the structure, arms folded. It's not a rocket, but it's kinda cool. Leonardo crouched to their level. Give me some paint and your wildest ideas, and we'll make it cooler than anything you've ever seen. Clara stood on the porch, drying her hands on a dish towel, watching the scene unfold. It had been 2 days since she let him stay. 2 days of watching Leonardo try without fanfare, without expectation. He helped with breakfast, he played with the boys, he cleaned without being asked. He still slept in the guest house, and he never crossed the invisible line she had drawn. But every now and then, she caught him looking at her, really looking, like he was memorizing who she'd become. And now, watching him joke with the boys, get paint on his shirt, laugh until he coughed, she felt something she didn't want to feel. Hope. Clara! Sophie's voice rang out suddenly from the driveway. The boys stopped. Leonardo froze. Clara turned slowly toward the source of the voice. There she was, Sophie. Blonde hair perfectly curled, sunglasses perched on her head, high heels clicking against the gravel like gunfire. She was holding her phone in one hand, designer purse in the other, a car idling behind her. Clara took a breath and stepped down from the porch. Not a good time, she said coldly. Oh, I'm sure it isn't, Sophie replied, not bothering to hide the venom in her tone. But see, I think it's time we had a little chat. Woman to woman. Leonardo approached quickly. Sophie, what are you doing here? Sophie turned to him, her voice sickeningly sweet. You didn't call. You didn't answer. You just disappeared like I didn't matter. I needed space, he said. This isn't the place. She laughed. Oh, come on, Leo. What's the plan? Move into this little farm and pretend you're daddy of the year now. Clara narrowed her eyes. You should leave. But Sophie ignored her. Do they even know who he really is? She asked, voice rising. The man who spent 3 years pretending his past didn't exist? The man who built a world with me and then threw it all away like trash? Stop, Leonardo said firmly. No, Sophie snapped. You think you can just erase me? After everything I did for you? I didn't ask you to do anything, he interrupted, anger rising in his voice. I was broken, and you were convenient. That's the truth. Sophie's face crumbled. You bastard. You knew I wasn't in love with you, he said, quieter now. You knew I was running from something. You just didn't care. She looked between him and Clara, her eyes burning. So this is it? This pathetic little countryside soap opera is your redemption arc. Clara stepped forward then, calm but lethal. You're not needed here, she said. You were never part of this family. You can leave. Sophie smirked. And what are you? The martyr? The poor abandoned wife who raised triplets all alone? That story won't sell, honey. But I bet a video would. Clara flinched. What are you talking about? Oh, you didn't know? Sophie said, lifting her phone. I recorded that little garden reunion the day we arrived. The one where your ex looked like he saw a ghost? It's gold. And with the right spin, I can make you look like a lunatic hiding his kids just to trap him again. You wouldn't, Leonardo growled. Watch me, she hissed. Unless, of course, you make this worth my while. Blackmail, Clara whispered. You came here to blackmail us. Sophie shrugged. Call it business. Leonardo stepped forward. Delete it. Make me. He held her gaze, then turned to Clara. Give me a minute. Clara hesitated, then nodded slowly, backing away with the boys, who stood wide-eyed near the porch. Their world suddenly cracked open by voices they didn't understand. Leonardo took Sophie by the arm and led her toward her car. I'm not going to threaten you, he said quietly, but I will say this. If you post that video, you'll hurt 3 children who never did anything to you. Sophie's jaw clenched. You hurt me first. I didn't love you, Sophie. That was the problem. I told you from the beginning that I was broken. You made up your own version of us. Tears welled in her eyes, and for a moment, all the anger slipped away. She looked lost. Just a girl who had wanted to be chosen. Wanted to be enough. I thought I could fix you, she whispered. You can't fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed, he said. And now, I do. But not for you. Not even for Clara. For them. He reached for her phone. She didn't resist. He opened the gallery, found the video, and hit delete. Then he handed it back. This is goodbye, he said. Sophie nodded, blinking away tears. Tell them they're lucky, even if they don't know it yet. And then she left. The car disappeared down the road, swallowed by the dust. Leonardo turned and walked back toward the porch. The boys had gone inside, but Clara waited on the steps, arms wrapped tightly around herself. She looked up at him. You didn't yell, she said softly. You didn't threaten her. You didn't play the hero. I'm not a hero, he said. I'm just a man trying to stop bleeding where he can. She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded toward the house. They're scared, she said, and confused. I'll talk to them, he said. No, she said gently. We'll talk to them. And for the first time since his return, she didn't close the door behind her. Clara stood in the living room, arms crossed tightly over her chest, watching as Leonardo crouched near the toy shelf, lining up tiny dinosaurs with practiced care. His hands were steady, but his eyes betrayed him. They kept darting toward the hallway where the boys lingered, waiting to be called in. They're nervous, Clara said quietly. I know, Leonardo replied without looking at her. She took a slow breath. They don't understand what's happening. They don't know what she was yelling about, but they know something's not right. I can explain it, he said. Not all at once, but I want to tell them the truth. Clara studied him, her voice careful. They've lived in a world where the monsters are only in stories. I never let them believe they were abandoned. I never used your name as a weapon. His throat tightened. You could have. I didn't want to poison them against someone they'd never met. I wanted them to grow up light, not carrying your shadows. He looked up at her then, something crumbling in his expression. And yet here I am, bringing shadows anyway. She didn't answer. He stood slowly. Let me try, please. She hesitated, then gave a single nod and turned toward the hallway. Boys, come here. 3 small bodies shuffled into the room, moving slowly, like stepping into a storm they couldn't see but could feel in their bones. Luca climbed onto the couch beside Clara, while Elias and Ian sat on the rug, eyes wide and uncertain. Leonardo knelt again, this time facing them. You guys okay? He asked softly. Ian shrugged. Why was that lady yelling? Luca added. She said weird stuff. Like you were bad. Leonardo glanced at Clara, who gave a small, encouraging nod. He turned back to them. That lady was someone I used to spend time with when I was lost. When I didn't know who I was or what really mattered. Are you still lost? Elias asked. No, he said. Not anymore. Luca tilted his head. But why did she say mean things about Mommy? Leonardo's voice caught, but he pushed through. Because I made a mistake a long time ago. A really big one. I hurt your mom. I hurt all of you. And she got angry about things that happened before I knew I had something. Someone worth staying for. Ian's eyes narrowed slightly. Did you know about us? Leonardo paused, then shook his head. I didn't. I should have, but I didn't. Would you have stayed if you did? Elias asked quietly. Leonardo didn't lie. He couldn't. I don't know. Back then, I was scared. I wasn't strong enough. But if I had seen your faces, if I had known what I was walking away from, he swallowed. I would have crawled back if I had to. Silence followed. The kind that sinks into walls and carpets and bones. Then, slowly, Luca stood and walked over. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. I drew this earlier, he said, handing it to Leonardo. It was a crude crayon drawing 4 figures under a big tree. A woman with long brown hair, 3 small boys, and beside them, a taller man with messy black hair, holding hands with the smallest one. Leonardo's breath hitched. That's you, Luca explained, pointing at the figure. I didn't know what color your eyes were, so I made them green. But they're not green. Leonardo looked up at Clara, his voice a whisper. He drew me. He draws everyone, she said softly. But you were never in the picture. Until now. Leonardo knelt down again and wrapped the paper carefully, like it was something sacred. Thank you, Luca. This means more to me than you'll ever know. Ian stood next. If you stay, will you help me fix the wheel on my race car? Leonardo smiled. Absolutely. And build a new ramp? Elias chimed in. As many ramps as you want. Luca climbed into his lap. But you're not going to yell like the lady, right? Leonardo's eyes burned. He shook his head slowly. No, buddy. No more yelling. No more leaving. Just me. Showing up. Every day. The weight of that promise wasn't lost on Clara. She watched them quietly. Her sons surrounding the man she once loved. Their small hands reaching out with the kind of forgiveness adults rarely know how to give. Later, after they were asleep, she found him in the kitchen again, washing a single cup. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. They trust fast, she said. I don't take it for granted, he replied. I did, she said softly. With you. He looked over. Clara? I believed in you back then, she continued, voice distant. So much that I didn't see the signs when you started pulling away. I thought I could hold us together with love alone. He dried the cup in silence. I'm not that girl anymore, she finished. So if you're hoping to win her back, she's gone. He turned to face her. I'm not here to win her. I'm here to meet the woman you became. Clara's lips trembled slightly. He stepped closer, stopping just a breath away. And I'm not afraid of her. She looked up at him, her voice barely above a whisper. You should be. But she didn't move when he reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Still, there was a knot in his chest. A weight. He knew what was waiting in the house. Not Clara. Not the boys. The truth. He dressed slowly and headed toward the main house, stopping by the garden to pluck a single lavender sprig. Clara's favorite. He didn't know what he'd do with it. Maybe just hold it. Maybe leave it on the table beside her coffee cup. But it felt right. Simple. Honest. When he entered the kitchen, the boys were gone. Likely outside, exploring. Clara stood by the window, arms crossed, watching them from a distance. Her hair was still damp from the shower, and she wore one of those faded cotton shirts she always loved, the ones with paint stains near the hem. He held out the lavender without a word. She took it slowly, fingers brushing his. I used to pick these when I was pregnant. His chest tightened. I didn't know that. "There's a lot you didn't know," she said, placing the lavender into a small ceramic jar on the windowsill. "I want to," he said. She turned, leaning back against the counter, eyes searching his. "Do you really?" "I do." She paused, then reached into a drawer and pulled out a thin, worn notebook. She held it in both hands before offering it to him. He hesitated. "What is it?" "My journal," she said. "From the year after you left." Leonardo stared at it. His pulse quickened. Clara looked away. "I wrote to you, every day. Things I never got to say. Things I hoped you'd feel even if you never read them." He reached out, hands trembling slightly as he took the notebook. "May I?" She nodded. He opened to the first page. "He left today." The silence was louder than any door slam. "I sat on the floor for an hour, thinking if I stayed still enough, maybe the pain would forget where to find me." His eyes stung. He flipped to another. "I felt the baby kick for the first time, and I cried. Not because it was beautiful, but because I was alone, and it felt like punishment for believing in love." A page later, "I dreamed you came back, not to stay, just to say you were sorry. I woke up sobbing. The boys won't know your voice, and I'm terrified that mine won't be enough." Leonardo closed the journal, pressing his hand against it like he was trying to keep it from bleeding. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't let myself know." Clara's voice was softer now. "You ran from your own story, Leo, and I had to finish it alone. I want to rewrite it, or start a new one. One I stay for." She stepped forward, her eyes locked on his. "Then you need to know all of it, not just the parts that make you cry." "I'm ready," he said. She nodded once, then walked past him, gesturing for him to follow. They entered the studio, a room Leonardo hadn't seen since before he left. The space had changed. Easels filled every corner, canvases stacked along the walls. Some were finished. Others were raw sketches, moments frozen in time. One painting stood uncovered. Clara standing in a hospital gown, pregnant, surrounded by shadows. But her face glowed with defiance. "This was the day I went into labor," she said. "Alone." He stepped closer, his voice barely a breath. "Why did you paint this?" "Because I needed to remember that I survived," she replied. "That I was strong, even without you." He turned to her. "You shouldn't have had to be. But I was," she said simply. "And that's why I'll never need you to rescue me. Not now. Not ever." Leonardo nodded slowly. "I don't want to rescue anyone. I just want to earn my place beside you. With them. With you, if you'll let me." Clara studied him. "What if I can't trust you again? Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving that you can." She looked away, biting her lip. "I kept one last thing from you," she said quietly. He waited. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small envelope, worn at the edges. She handed it to him without a word. He opened it slowly. Inside was a paternity test, dated just after the boys were born. His name was listed clearly. Father, Leonardo Kim. His breath hitched. "I never doubted they were yours," she said. "But I knew one day you'd need to see it with your own eyes. That you wouldn't believe me. Not then." Tears filled his eyes. "Clara, I don't deserve your grace. But thank you for giving me the chance to see." Her voice broke. "I hated you for a long time, but I never wanted you to die in my memory." He stepped closer. "What do you want now?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I want you to stay, for as long as you mean it." He reached out slowly, placing his hand on her cheek. She leaned into it, just slightly, but enough to tell him what words couldn't. Then she whispered, "But if you ever leave again, I won't paint you back in." And he nodded, sealing the vow without needing to speak. He stood in the hallway outside Clara's room, one hand resting on the doorframe. The light inside was soft, coming from a small reading lamp beside her bed. She was sitting cross-legged in her chair, wrapped in a blanket, a book open in her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was staring out the window, watching the rain like it carried answers she hadn't asked for yet. He knocked once. She turned slowly, her voice low. "You don't have to knock. I wasn't sure, he said, stepping inside. She looked at him for a moment, then motioned to the chair across from her. Sit, he obeyed. For a while they said nothing, just sat there, listening to the storm build and the wind tug at the house like a restless ghost. Finally, Clara spoke. Do you remember the first storm we spent here? Leonardo nodded. You couldn't sleep. You kept checking the windows. You laughed at me, she said with a faint smile. Said the house had survived 100 years and wouldn't collapse now. I wasn't wrong. No, she said softly. But I was scared, not of the storm, of the silence, of being here with you and feeling so small, like I was playing a role I didn't know how to play. He looked at her, really looked. You were never small. I was to you. He flinched. Clara closed the book on her lap and set it aside. Her fingers curled under the blanket, gripping it as if to hold herself together. You used to make me feel like I didn't have to be anyone but myself. Until one day, it felt like even that wasn't enough. That day still haunts me, he said. The day I left. She nodded, eyes distant. You said I made you feel trapped. You looked me in the eyes and told me you couldn't breathe anymore. That I was suffocating your potential. I didn't mean it. But you said it, she whispered. And for years, every time I heard my sons laugh, I wondered if I was doing the same to them. If I was too much. If I would make them leave one day, too. Leonardo's voice cracked. Clara, please. She stood up suddenly, walking to the window, her back to him. You know the hardest part of all this? It's not forgiving you. I think part of me did that a long time ago. It's forgiving myself. For loving you that deeply. For not seeing the danger in giving everything I had to someone who didn't know how to stay. He rose slowly, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. I've changed. I know you hear that and maybe it sounds like another lie, another line. But I've changed because losing you broke something in me I didn't know could break. She turned then, tears in her eyes, but not falling. You think change is enough? No, he said. I think trying has to be. Clara stared at him, the silence between them louder than thunder. I can't promise to be perfect, he continued, but I can promise to stay, even when it's hard, even when you don't want to look at me, even when the past gets too loud. A long silence stretched out before she spoke again. You don't get to rewrite what happened, she said. You don't get to erase the nights I held all 3 boys at once while my body still ached from labor. You don't get to delete the fear I lived in, waiting for bills I couldn't pay, or the loneliness so deep I forgot the sound of my own voice. I don't want to erase it, he said. I want to carry it, with you, from now on. She looked down, breathing hard, the wall around her cracking. Then, almost without realizing it, she reached into her nightstand and pulled out a photo frame. She handed it to him. It was an ultrasound image. I found out the day you left, she said, voice breaking. I wanted to tell you that night. I had dinner ready, candles, your favorite wine. I thought it would be a beautiful beginning. Leonardo's knees buckled. He sat down again, holding the frame like it might shatter in his hands. I left without knowing they were real, he whispered. I left before I even gave you a chance to tell me. Clara sat back down across from him, exhaustion in every movement. Do you know how many nights I sat here thinking, if he had just stayed 10 more minutes? I'm sorry, he said. God, Clara, I'm sorry. Her face twisted, the tears finally spilling. She tried to hide them, but it was no use. I built walls so I wouldn't feel this again, she said. So I wouldn't look at you and remember the girl who believed love could fix everything. You were right to believe it, he said. You just loved the wrong version of me. But I'm not that man anymore. He reached out, gently, slowly, letting his fingers rest over hers. She didn't pull away. Then he whispered, let me help you heal the part of you that I broke, not to fix it, but to be the one who never lets it happen again. Her lip trembled. If you hurt them, Leonardo, if you make them love you only to disappear again. I won't, he said. I couldn't, because now I know what it means, to be loved by them, and by you. Clara looked at him, every part of her trembling. And then, with a breath so fragile it could barely be called sound, she said, "I'm scared." He nodded, eyes wet. "Me too." And they sat there, in the stormlight, two broken hearts trying to remember what it felt like to beat in sync. Not perfectly, not like before, because hope had a sound, and it was starting to echo again in places she had long sealed off. Inside the house, her phone buzzed. Once, then again. A third time, fast and insistent. She walked back in slowly, a strange chill creeping over her skin as she picked up the phone from the counter. Unknown number. Unknown number. Private account tagged you in a post. Clara frowned. She tapped the screen, and her stomach dropped. There it was. A still from the moment Sophie had recorded them in the garden. The exact second Leonardo's face had gone pale as he saw her with the boys. It had been posted anonymously, captioned cruelly, "What would you do if your billionaire ex came crawling back after abandoning you and your surprise triplets?" Thousands of likes, hundreds of comments, some calling it fake, some calling her fake, some defending her, most tearing her apart. She couldn't breathe. A video had followed, edited, spliced, twisted. It made her look calculating, made Leonardo seem naive. It painted their story as a spectacle, a drama for amusement, a weapon. She closed her eyes, her hand trembling. From outside, a door creaked. Footsteps. The screen door opened and closed softly. Leonardo's voice came carefully from behind. "Clara, what is it?" She didn't turn around. "She posted it." He was quiet, too quiet. "She waited," Clara whispered, gripping the counter. "She waited until we let our guard down." "I'll take it down," he said, his voice low, furious. "I'll get my legal team on it right now." Clara turned, her eyes blazing. "You should have never let her get close enough to record anything, Leonardo. You brought her here. I didn't know she was that vindictive. You didn't think—" Clara snapped, voice rising. "You let a stranger into our lives without warning. You let her near my children." He stepped closer. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake. But I will fix this." "You can't fix this," she cried. "You can't erase what's already out there. You think the boys won't hear about this? That they won't come home from school one day asking why strangers are calling me a liar? A gold digger? You think I haven't seen this before?" Her voice broke, and she pressed her hand to her mouth to stifle the sob threatening to escape. Leonardo stood frozen. "Let me help you carry it." She looked at him, her voice trembling. "And what happens the next time something from your world collides with mine? What happens when your past keeps leaking into the life I fought to build from the ruins you left me in?" "I'll protect you," he said, "and them, with everything I have." Clara shook her head, eyes shining with fury and pain. "You can't protect what you don't fully understand." Leonardo's fists tightened at his sides. "Then explain it to me." "You think this is just about a video?" she whispered. "This is about you, about the man you were, the people you chose, the silence you gave me. This is about how easily I could become invisible again the moment your life gets too complicated." "I see you now," he said desperately. "I see you." Her voice dropped, ragged. "But for how long, Leo?" He stepped closer, reaching for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold on either. "You think I didn't feel humiliated when I saw that video?" he said. "You think I didn't want to disappear? But I stayed. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Not because it's easy, not because I feel guilty, but because I'm yours. I've always been yours, even when I was too blind and too cowardly to admit it." Clara looked down, blinking fast. "I don't want to be someone you love out of regret." "You're not," he said firmly. "You're the person I wake up hoping to deserve. The one who taught me what love actually is. And if I have to fight the entire world to keep this safe, I will. I swear it." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. "You think words are enough?" she whispered. "No," he said. "That's why I'm staying." A beat passed. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "What if they start knocking on our door, Leo? What if reporters show up here?" "Let them," he said, taking her hand again, more firmly this time. We'll shut the door in their faces together. She stared at him, searching, fighting something deep inside. Clara, he said softly, you don't have to carry this alone anymore. Not your reputation, not your pain, not even your boys. Our boys, she corrected, the word catching in her throat. He smiled gently. Our boys. Another pause. Then she stepped closer. And this time, she rested her forehead against his chest. She didn't speak, didn't cry. She just breathed, slowly, deeply, as if she were finally letting go of something she'd held for too long. Leonardo wrapped his arms around her. Leonardo was on the rug with the boys, folding what he claimed would be the fastest paper plane in the world. His sleeves were rolled up, fingers moving with care, focus etched into his face like this task meant everything. And maybe it did. Luca leaned closer. You're doing it wrong. Leonardo chuckled. Says the kid whose plane just hit the cat. Elias grinned. That was on purpose. It was a stealth mission. Ian, ever quiet, held up his latest creation. Mine has wings that flap. Clara sipped her tea, a smile tugging at her lips as she watched them. For a while it felt normal, safe, like they were all part of something real again. Then Luca's voice broke through the quiet with a question that landed like a stone. Are you staying forever? Leonardo looked up. His hands froze in mid-fold. Clara's heart skipped. He set the paper down carefully and turned toward his son. I want to, if you want me to. Elias looked at Clara. What about Mommy? Does she want you to stay? Leonardo didn't speak. Clara met their eyes. Her throat tightened, but she answered, I want him to be here, but only if he's really going to stay. No disappearing. No broken promises. The boys looked back at Leonardo, and then Ian asked the question no one was ready for. Why did you leave before? Leonardo felt it like a punch to the chest. The room fell still. He stood up slowly, walked to the sofa, and sat down beside Clara. She didn't move away. She didn't protect him either. She just waited. I left because I was scared, he said quietly. I didn't know how to be a father or a husband. I listened to people who lied to me, and instead of asking questions, I ran. Luca frowned. You ran away from Mommy? I did, Leonardo admitted. And from you, even before I knew you were here. Elias looked angry now. That's not fair. No, it's not, Leonardo agreed. It wasn't fair to her, or to any of you. He leaned forward, his voice trembling. I think about it every day. All the moments I missed. The first steps, first words, birthdays, bedtime stories. I can never get those back. And that hurts more than anything. Ian crawled closer, watching him carefully. Do you get scared now? Leonardo nodded. All the time. I'm scared of failing again. I'm scared of letting you down. Clara's gaze softened slightly. But I'm still here, he continued. And I'll stay scared if it means I get to be your dad. The boys were quiet, processing. Then, slowly, Ian reached for his hand. Leonardo looked down, startled. The boy whispered, I think we can share you. Luca stood. Only if you come to my school art show next week. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Elias crossed his arms. And you have to read us bedtime stories. Every night, Leonardo said. A beat. Then all three boys nodded in unison, like a pact had been made without needing to be said aloud. Leonardo glanced at Clara. Her eyes were wet, though she didn't let the tears fall. She whispered, They chose you. His chest filled with something he didn't have a name for. Not quite relief, not quite redemption, but it was warm. It was whole. Later, after the boys had gone to bed and the house was silent except for the rain tapping gently at the windows again, Clara found Leonardo sitting alone in the kitchen, a mug of tea untouched in his hands. She leaned against the doorframe. They love you already, she said softly. I don't deserve it, he replied. No, she agreed. You don't. But love rarely waits for people to be worthy. It just arrives, and stays, or doesn't. He looked up at her. She stepped closer. You said once you couldn't breathe, she murmured. That being with me was suffocating. Leonardo winced. I've hated myself every day since I said that. She sat across from him. And now, he said slowly, when I see them, I remember how to breathe again. Her breath caught. He reached across the table and laid his hand over hers. Thank you for giving me this chance. Clara studied him, long and quiet. You're not finished proving yourself, she said. I know, but tonight, she whispered. You were brave. His hand squeezed hers gently. So were you. She looked down at their fingers, then up again, a cautious hope flickering behind her eyes. And for the first time, she didn't say, don't get comfortable. Leonardo stood behind them, adjusting the strap on Ian's backpack. He looked up at Clara as the boys climbed into the back seat. You okay? He asked softly. She gave a small nod. They've never invited anyone to one of these before. Just me. He stepped closer. It means something, doesn't it? She looked at him carefully, then opened the passenger door and got in. They didn't speak much during the drive. The boys filled the car with excited chatter, arguing over whose project would win the teacher's gold star. But Clara stayed quiet, and Leonardo stole glances at her whenever the road curved just right. Her profile was calm, serene, but he could see it, the tension beneath her stillness, the guarded readiness she wore like armor. At the school, the parking lot buzzed with parents, balloons, folding chairs, and a makeshift art gallery set up in the gymnasium. Leonardo had stood in front of boardrooms full of billionaires and media hounds. But as he stepped through the doors with 3 small hands wrapped around his fingers, he had never felt smaller or prouder. Their section was near the back wall. Paintings on construction paper, cardboard sculptures, clay monsters with far too many eyes. And in the center of it all was a canvas that made Leonardo stop breathing for a moment. 3 boys, painted in wild, joyful strokes, vivid, chaotic, alive. Behind them stood a tall man, his face unfinished, shaded only with faint pencil lines, just enough to see he was smiling. Leonardo whispered, Luca, is this yours? Luca nodded proudly. It's called When He Stayed. Clara gasped softly behind them. Leonardo crouched to eye level. Why didn't you finish the face? Luca looked up, thoughtful. Because I didn't know how you smiled yet. Leonardo blinked back the sting in his eyes. Do you know now? Luca reached up and gently traced the corner of Leonardo's mouth. You smile like this when we're all together. He couldn't speak. Clara stepped forward and placed a hand on Luca's shoulder. It's beautiful, she murmured. The other boys tugged Leonardo toward their pieces, each different, each loud in color and emotion. But his mind was still wrapped around that unfinished face, that moment in paint, that truth. The event passed in a blur. There were awkward paper certificates, tiny trophies, and spilled juice boxes. Clara laughed at something another mother said. Leonardo helped a teacher lift a heavy easel. The boys dragged them from one corner of the gym to the next like proud curators of a world they'd built. But later, in the quiet after the crowd had thinned, Clara found Leonardo outside by the swing set. He was sitting on the edge of the wooden frame, staring out at the schoolyard as the wind kicked dust around his shoes. She sat beside him. Neither spoke at first. Then, quietly, he said, They're brilliant. They are. He looked down. That painting. It hit me hard. She exhaled. It hit me hard. He turned to her, his voice thick. I wasn't there when they were born. I wasn't there for their first steps. But today, for the first time, I think, they see me. Not as a stranger. Not as someone who came late. But as someone who stayed. Clara's eyes didn't leave his. They're starting to trust you. He nodded, then looked away. But I haven't forgiven myself. I don't know if I ever will. You don't need to, she said softly. You just need to keep showing up. They sat in silence again. The wind rustled the trees like applause. Then Clara spoke again, voice low and hesitant. You know, Elias asked me something last night. Leonardo turned. What? He asked if, when he grows up, he could still call you Dad. Even if you and I aren't married. Leonardo froze. "And what did you say?" he asked, almost afraid to hear it. Clara smiled faintly. "I told him love doesn't disappear just because something doesn't look perfect on the outside." Leonardo's voice shook. "Clara, do you think we'll ever be us again?" She was quiet. Her fingers toyed with a frayed edge of the bench. Then she looked up at him, steady and clear. "I think we're becoming something better," she said. "Not a redo, not a fairy tale, just real, messy, whole." He reached for her hand, and this time, she took it without hesitation. Inside the house, the silence felt different. Not heavy, not tense, felt earned. Leonardo helped tuck the boys into bed. His movements slower, more tender now. He paused over each one, brushing their hair back, kissing their foreheads like he was afraid they might vanish if he blinked. Clara stood in the hallway watching, not interrupting. When they stepped out of the room, she reached behind her and closed the door with care. "They're safe," she said quietly. Leonardo nodded. "For once, I feel like I am too." Clara walked past him, her fingers grazing the wall as she made her way down the stairs. He followed, unsure of the look on her face, somewhere between hesitation and quiet resolve. In the living room, she sat on the armrest of the old couch and crossed her arms. "There's something I need to say," she began, not meeting his eyes. He stood across from her, pulse beginning to thrum. "All right," she inhaled, deep and slow. "I've carried anger for so long, Leo. Sometimes, it felt like it was the only thing keeping me standing." He nodded slowly, waiting. "But lately, the weight's changing. Not disappearing, but shifting. And I keep asking myself, what do I do with it now?" He stepped closer. "What does your heart tell you?" She looked up at him, eyes soft but clouded. "It tells me that I survived because I had to. But now, I want to live. And I don't know how to do that if I keep walking around with walls." He sat down beside her on the couch, careful not to close the distance too quickly. "Then let me help. Not to break the walls, but to build something new next to them." She smiled faintly. "You say the right things now. Because I mean them." A long pause settled between them. Then Clara stood and walked toward the hallway, disappearing for a moment. When she returned, she carried a dusty box in her arms. She set it down on the coffee table and opened it. Inside were paintings, not framed, just loose canvas, some torn at the corners, some faded. She pulled one out and held it toward him. It was a portrait of her, pregnant, sitting on the porch of the estate. Her face wasn't sad. It wasn't glowing either. It looked human, tired, brave. "I painted this the week before I gave birth," she said. "It was the last time I imagined what it would be like if you came back." He stared at it, overcome. "You still had hope," he murmured. "I had to," she said. "It was the only thing I hadn't lost." She placed the painting aside and pulled out another. A field of lavender with 3 small figures running through it, hands outstretched toward a faceless figure ahead of them. "This one I painted last year, when Ian got sick with a fever and kept calling for someone he didn't know." Leonardo looked at her, stunned. Clara blinked back tears. He said, "Daddy will come," over and over. And I kept telling him there was no daddy, but somewhere in him, he believed. "I should have been there." "You weren't," she said, voice hardening. "But you are now." She leaned back, arms resting in her lap. "And the truth is, I'm tired of surviving alone." Leonardo's voice cracked. "Then let me stay. Not out of guilt. Not because it's convenient. But because I've found the place I want to be. Not for a while. Not to make amends. But forever." Clara turned to him slowly, something changing in her eyes. And for the first time, she didn't look like she was bracing for disappointment. "You say, forever, like you finally know what it means." "I do," he whispered. She reached out and placed her hand over his. "Then start by being here tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Not with promises, with presence." Leonardo nodded. "I will." They stayed like that in silence, her hand resting over his, the box of paintings between them. a box full of memory, of grief, of moments nearly lost, but also of beginnings, of brushstrokes that waited patiently for healing. Outside, the wind picked up, and somewhere in the distance, the first star of the evening blinked through the clouds. Inside the house, something fragile and necessary settled into place. Not forgiveness, not quite love. It was the kind of quiet that made Leonardo ache. He had grown used to chaos, to always fixing, explaining, chasing. But now mornings began with pancakes and spilled juice, afternoons with laughter spilling through the garden, and evenings closed with bedtime stories, sleepy heads on his shoulder, and Clara moving gracefully through their shared space like she had always belonged to a different kind of world, one made of resilience and quiet strength. And still, he hadn't said it. Not the words that had lived on the edge of his tongue since the moment he first held her journal, since he watched the boys sleep, since he saw the canvas titled when he stayed. "I love you." He hadn't said it, because part of him still feared he didn't deserve to. Now it was late. The boys were already asleep, the house wrapped in soft shadows and the scent of rosemary from the tea Clara had just brewed. She sat on the back porch in her oversized sweater, knees drawn up, staring out over the quiet field. The moon was low and heavy, casting long lines of silver across the grass. Leonardo stepped out slowly, careful not to disturb the moment. "Still awake?" he said softly. Clara didn't look at him, couldn't sleep. He sat beside her, knees brushing. "Something on your mind?" She hesitated. "Today Ian told me he wants you to come to his parent-teacher meeting next week." Leonardo smiled. "I'd be honored. He didn't ask me first. He just told me." She let out a breath, not quite a laugh. "He's already written your name on the volunteer sheet. I'll bring snacks." Clara smiled but didn't look at him. She sipped her tea, the porcelain clinking softly in her hands. Then she said, almost too quietly, "They don't hesitate anymore. They trust you." He nodded. "That means everything to me." Clara turned toward him slowly. Her eyes shimmered in the moonlight. "Do you know what that means to me?" He held her gaze. "Tell me." "It means if you ever walk away again, it won't just break me. It'll break them." His breath caught. "I won't," he said, and his voice cracked. "I couldn't." Clara placed her cup down beside her and turned fully to face him. "You said once that you were afraid of becoming your father. That commitment felt like a cage." "I remember," he whispered. "But look at them," she said. "They don't trap you, Leo. They've freed you. Every day you become more yourself. Not the man who left, the one who stayed." He looked down, chest heavy. "That man didn't exist before you." She reached for his hand. "Then don't let him go now." Leonardo looked up at her. "I think I fell in love with you all over again," he said, his voice low, breaking. "Not because I wanted to, but because I finally saw you. The you who kept going. The one who didn't need me, but still let me come back." Clara's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. He continued, "And I love them. God, Clara, I love them so much it terrifies me. Every time they run toward me, I feel like I'm being given something I'll never be able to repay." "You repay it by staying," she said. "I will," he promised. Then he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I love you," he whispered. She closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek, slow, silent. And then, "I never stopped," she whispered back. Leonardo leaned forward, forehead resting gently against hers, his hands cradling her face like something sacred. She exhaled, shaky, and her fingers curled around his wrists. They stayed like that for a long time, saying nothing more, because love, real love, didn't need grand gestures now. It had already been written in sleepless nights and folded drawings, in porch steps and whispered confessions, in the small and steady decision to stay. Eventually, Clara pulled back, a soft smile on her lips. "Come inside. You're finally home." He stood, offering his hand. She took it, and together they stepped inside, not into a perfect future, but into a real one. One that was earned, one they would build hand in hand, day by day.